the reaction from the Obama administration was not well received by the Thai people, as well as many in the government. Basically, more and more, the Philippine people resent terribly Scarborough Shoal when America basically, back during the Obama administration, basically backed off and let, for the first against an American treaty ally, they let the CCP or the China come in and occupy territory claimed by the Philippines, as I know happened repeatedly in speeches by the ambassadors and charge d'affaires here, where they would publicly embarrass their counterparts on the stage with them by scolding them about democracy and literally.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the situation. It looks like on one hand, Thailand is kind of standing up and scrapping and withdrawing from some projects, be it civilian or military, with China. But on the other hand, they are kind of leaning towards China. So how would you describe the situation there? Does China's policy worked with Thailand or not? Is it still a Western ally, US ally, or not anymore?
In the political warfare book, I devote 2 chapters to Thailand. Bottom line is Thailand remains a valuable treaty ally to the United States of America. However, people have to understand how China, the Sino-Thai relationship has evolved very significantly from a snapshot in time that some Americans still remember during the Cold War, when we were fighting side by side on the battlefields of the Republic of Korea after it was invaded by North Korea and the People's Republic of China. They remember how we fought side by side in the Vietnam War to protect Thailand from being taken over by the Communist Party of Thailand, which is being run, incidentally, out of Yunnan province in the PRC. They led everything, training, everything conducted by the People's Republic of China. It was basically their war being fought by the People's Liberation Army of Thailand and the Communist Party of Thailand, but under direction of the PRC. That was 30 years long. That civil war was 30 years long, largely forgotten now, largely ignored in history books, largely not discussed because of the Sino-Thai influence here, very, very strong economically, politically. There's a seismic change in the way that people in the Thai government and many Thais see the relationship with China. China is it's right next door. It's right up north. The U.S. is far away, and the U.S. has been inconsistent in its relationship, maintaining its relationship with the PRC, or sorry, not the PRC, but with Thailand, while the PRC has gone from running a 30-year civil war against the Royal Thai government to wooing it with a charm offensive that it's pretty hard for a lot of Thais to resist. There's more Confucius institutes and Confucius classrooms in the Kingdom of Thailand than there is in all of the other Association of Southeast Asian Nations combined. There's a massive influence in the news media. Again, those media relationships, those agreements that we talked about between Poland's organizations, the Polish public broadcaster, TVP, I think it is, and then the also your Polish press agency and others. That's happening all the time in Thailand. And so the information the Thai people get online through online postings, through news media, it's there's a lot of very pro PRC, pro CCP propaganda that's fed to the Thai people every day. To their great credit, there is for example, a milk tea alliance between a lot of Thais and the people of free and democratic Taiwan, and there others. Hong Kong was involved in that before the CCP brutally crushed whatever freedoms were left in Hong Kong. So there's a lot of Thais standing up to this. Some people in the Thai government who know they cannot go too far. The philosophy here is be like bamboo in the wind. if the strongest wind, and I've had this said to me by former Minister of Foreign Affairs here, if the strongest wind is coming from the north, they will bend to Beijing. If the strongest wind is coming from the west or east, depending on how you want to count the direction from Washington, then you'll get more
Yes.
receptive meetings in Bangkok with Washington officials, because Washington is showing strength. But when there's a vacuum, when there's an absence of strength from the democracies led by Washington, then Thailand will bend with the wind. So again, the debate in Thailand goes back and forth. Right now, it's there was a big swing after the 2014 coup against the elected prime minister. Without going into the details on that, bottom line is America reacted very harshly to the coup
Yes.
with its longtime ally, and who had helped the U.S. a great deal quietly, privately in the region over many decades. And then the reaction from the Obama administration was not well received by the Thai people, as well as many in the government. Whereas China, the People's Republic, a brutal totalitarian dictatorship which has no qualms with coups, military coups, was very gracious and offering up all kinds of support. And so the tilt towards Beijing goes back even back to the late 1970s. But the real strong tilt, you could say, came after 2014, the real seismic event. And so there was a stronger, if the pendulum went to the far left towards Beijing for several years after that, for a number of years after, and with Prime Minister Prayut being interviewed by Time Magazine and saying our number one partner in the world is China, somewhere down the line is the United States. The pendulum has swung back a bit more to the U.S. now. There's more of an attempt at balance. But again, a massive ongoing political warfare campaign by the PRC within Thailand that most Thais don't see, but it's here. Very strong embassy, PRC embassy, and very strong economic interests.
Okay.
Other ways that you're basically buying support and goodwill by the Thai people. Did you want me to go into Taiwan at this point, or did you want to ask separate questions on?
Yeah, I wanted. I think Taiwan we've covered. I wanted to ask a little bit about the Philippines because that's another U.S. ally, and that is leaning now more pro China. So these are the two countries I wanted to ask you about: Thailand and the Philippines.
The Philippines is also a treaty ally of the United States of America. And it's a complex situation there right now. The New People's Army, which is the military arm of the Philippine Communist Party, basically, now is at least they're proclaiming that they're actually targeting PRC businesses in the Philippines because they claim to be first nationalists and communists second. That's debatable. I mean, we do see headlines, we do see other threats by the NPA, but we don't know how real that is because there's always, as the Chinese Communist Party repeatedly says, they may have differences. They may be patching up relations with a particular country, but they always maintain through the International Liaison Department party-to-party relations. So there's a strong suspicion that the Chinese Communist Party is maintaining relations with the Communist Party of the Philippines. As far as the influence within the Philippines, of course, there's strong economic pro-PRC economic interests there. Some of the military are pro-PRC, but basically, more and more, the Philippine people resent terribly Scarborough Shoal when America basically, back during the Obama administration, basically backed off and let, for the first time against, well, not first time, but against an American treaty ally, they let the CCP or the China come in and occupy territory claimed by the Philippines. And we didn't do anything about it. We brokered an agreement. The China immediately abandoned the agreement once they got the Philippines to back off from Scarborough Shoal and to pull away. Then they went in and occupied it, and so Thailand looked at that back in 2012, and of course the Philippines saw that, and they saw America abandoning a treaty ally. It had serious ramifications that were basically gaffed off by the administration at the time, and even by some former members of that administration. I've talked to them, and oh no, we weren't going to go to war over a bunch of rocks. Like you seriously underestimated the
And then
geostrategic
even
implications of
and then even
abandoning the Philippines.
Obama lets he fortify the atolls and islands in
Yes.
the area, which was another disaster we have to deal with still nowadays. So actually,
Huge disaster, and then not forcefully backing the Philippines on the arbitral decision on the South China Sea. Philippines fought that basically by itself, won, and then we basically left them hanging. I remember talking to State Department officials in embassies here in Asia, and yeah, we've been told not to keep it low key. Really, treaty ally, you won a major, probably the most important ruling regarding containing or stopping Chinese expansionism in the region, and you're just going to play cool, just sit in the back and see how the Philippines handles it. Well, of course, there was a feeling of abandonment by the Philippines, and of course, there was a lack of trust in the U.S., which again is sort of a checkered but close relationship over the since the 1898. But again, the people of the Philippines right now see, by and large, if you read the media coming out of there and talk to people at, say, the Ateneo school, which is like their Kennedy school in Manila, there's very, very deep concerns from the workers all the way up through the intellectuals and the governmental elites. And under the Marcos regime that it now just has been elected and taking office, it's pretty uncertain as to how that relationship will evolve. All we know is that it's going to be a pretty bumpy road because Duterte's daughter is now the vice
yes,
president, and he was very pro PRC
yeah.
in general, based on his leftist, hardcore leftist background, and ideologically is predisposed to the CCP, and then for other promises that it was given. Well, a lot of those promises never like so many of the other CCP promises globally and Belt and Road initiative and related activities, they aren't fulfilled. So even at the end of his reign, Duterte was feeling a bit burned by the PRC. So let's see where the current administration goes. But I think there'll be some, would be pleasantly surprised at times. But based on the still ongoing, very strong political warfare going on and economic warfare going on within the Philippines, you can expect we're going to be deeply disappointed at other times.
You mentioned there was this disappointment during the Obama administration. What about Trump? Was it? I mean, only those two cases, like Thailand and Philippines. Was it a little bit better? Did they have more support from the U.S. or was he so focused on China that he didn't have time for those two allies?
No, there was a concerted effort under later in the Trump administration to improve relations, so certainly with Thailand, sending over much more senior officials and doing it in a way that that wasn't grossly insulting to the. You may not like the junta, but you don't. First thing you do, if you're Assistant Secretary of State Danny Russell, prancing Danny Russell, when you get off the airplane, the first thing you do is you don't stick the finger in the eye of the ruling regime. You go pay a visit to your host before you pay a visit to the deposed former prime minister, who the Constitutional Court ejected from the office. Not the coup took place after she was kicked out of office by the Constitutional Court. So there was a lot of inept diplomacy. There was efforts, great efforts by later Secretary Pompeo and Assistant Secretary Dave Stilwell to get the relationship going back properly and getting very high level 4-star admirals ahead of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, for example, coming out here and trying to stabilize the relationship. It will never go back to the way it was during the Cold War, but there's much more mature ways of dealing with the relationship and quietly working issues rather than publicly insulting the administration, as I know happened repeatedly in speeches by the ambassadors and charge d'affaires here, where they would publicly there in Thailand, they would publicly embarrass their counterparts on the stage with them by scolding them about democracy and literally treating them like children. That was so amateurish, so childlike. The Trump administration, under better leadership in the State Department, was making efforts. And well, I read articles today that say that all history began today with the Biden administration with trying to repair the ties. No, it actually goes back to certainly the last 2 years of the Trump administration, where there were noble and practical and useful efforts to stabilize that relationship. With the Philippines, again, there's been a lot of quiet work done, and I hope that work continues to stabilize that relationship and give them. The big thing is they've got to trust the United States, and if they can't, well, China's a lot closer, and it's massive. The People's Liberation Army Navy now is soon going to be twice the size of the United States Navy, and the People's Liberation Army Air Force has an extended range now because of those islands you talked about, those artificial islands, and
Yes.
the way they dredged up the coral reefs and raped basically the ecology to build their unsinkable aircraft carriers in the South China Sea. Well, that extended the range of their strategic bombers and even their fighter support, attack aircraft, very significantly. And it puts a lot of Pacific Island countries, Australia, a lot of others are at risk now, at far greater risk than something other than an intercontinental ballistic missile. They're now under, in some cases, within range of those aircraft, and certainly the ballistic submarines and the attack submarines, and now the growing fleet of aircraft carriers. So, if the United States doesn't show strength, if the United States does not show leadership and intelligent leadership and strong leadership, like we did with George Kennan and others, began our counteroffensive in the Cold War back in the late 1940s, you really can't blame the Philippines and Thailand for saying, "Yeah, we got to deal with the dragon at our door, and you're not offering us much help." So it does largely come down to America leading once again and doing it with strength, consistency, not in a way that your press secretary has to go out repeatedly after a U.S. president have said something and say what the president meant to say was. You can't have that because you're not instilling faith. You're not calming the situation any. You're just saying you're showing weakness on a massive scale to countries like the People's Republic of China, like Russia, like Iran and North Korea, that are just they're slathering. They're just waiting for the sign to show that the balance of power is shifted, that they can attack, take whatever they want with no ramifications. That Washington will be too weak and will be afraid to respond, and certainly won't be wise enough to deter them or stop them in the opening phases of an offensive, say, against Taiwan or an offensive against other countries that are our friends and allies.
The last question I wanted to ask you is, which is rarely discussed outside of the US, is the fentanyl problem. Maybe you could also talk a little bit about this. How does it fit into this warfare?
We'll go back and read the book by the two PLA colonels that came out in 1999. It's not doctrine. There's always that debate between our so-called China scholars. Oh, well, that book was not doctrine. It was printed by the PLA, but through an entertainment side of their publishing. Whereas, no, that was a serious book that reflected the thinking of the Chinese Communist Party, the Politburo. It's you win any way you can win. There are no rules. It's unrestricted warfare. And part of that unrestricted warfare, the 24 warfares, there's more, but the 24 warfares that are outlined in that book is drug warfare. Well, we know it also as chemical warfare, which was outlawed after World War One. But it's a way of subverting society by Chinese drug suppliers. They're making elements of the fentanyl. They're working with Mexican drug cartels, one to get the fentanyl into America's open southern border, and then they're laundering the money for the cartels. I mean, there's this. These are companies from a totalitarian, repressive totalitarian regime of unimaginable proportions, even to George Orwell. That if you called Xi Jinping, if you're in Beijing today, Richard, and you tweet that Xi Jinping looks like Winnie the Pooh, within 24 to 30 seconds, your hotel door is going to be kicked in, and the Ministry of State Security is going to be, collaring you and putting you in handcuffs and dragging you away. This is a totalitarian regime that has capabilities to monitor. The surveillance state is amazing in the PRC, and they're exporting that globally. Incidentally, their surveillance state capability. Yet they cannot find these massive organizations within the PRC that are providing all these ingredients for the fentanyl and that are working so closely with the Mexican and other South American drug cartels. This doesn't wash. This doesn't wash at all. These are state-sanctioned terrorism. It's state-sanctioned chemical warfare to basically subvert, undermine, corrode American society, and it's markedly successful. Again, they
Yeah.
had 100,000 kills last year, dead Americans, more than 100,000 dead Americans as a result of fentanyl. There's other factors involved, of course, but the PRC, well, they'll pretend to be cooperating with the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, and the Joint Interagency Task Force West, and out of the U.S. Pacific Command headquarters. Well, they show, yeah, we'll help you on this case, and we'll help you on that case. They're pretending. In the bigger picture, they're continuing to wage drug warfare while pretending on a tactical level to cooperate, but they're strategically, they have no intention of cooperating. They're at war with us, Richard, and they're fighting that war. We, unfortunately, are not fully engaged in fighting back
Yeah,
yet.
I know, I know. Okay, thank you very much for your time. It was very interesting and insightful. We covered a few countries, covered a little bit the region here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Bye.